Hello and welcome to the Guns on Pegs podcast with me, George Brown.
And me, Chris Horn.
How are you doing, Chris?
Equally as bad as you, I think.
Yes, I'm not feeling my best. So let's explain. We were at the Game Awards last night, where we sponsor one of the awards, and it was a very enjoyable evening. I think that's the way to put it, isn't it?
Really good fun. Different for one of these sort of shooting-related get-togethers. We were on a boat. Actually, we went underneath the underneath Tower Bridge with it opened up for us. I've never done that.
It was very cool.
One of those sort of minor bucket list things to do.
Yeah, I do wonder if the organisers are going to slightly regret the boat thing, though, because I think I feel like at a normal of one of those events when it's on dry land, people sort of start slipping off at kind of 10 o'clock or whatever. But for various complicated reasons, we were all still on the boat at about 20 past 11.
Not just slipping off.
Well, falling off.
Well, indeed. And it's not just the slipping off. It's those that turn up late, including the champion of champions of the award last night. He just missed the boat entirely. So he just missed the whole evening. And then I saw a message from our dear friend Ben Randall, who was effing and blinding at someone because he was left on the shore as well.
Oh, that's so funny.
So if you made it, it was great fun. And if you didn't have a train to catch afterwards, it was also great fun.
Yes, well, I was still in London at 9 o'clock this morning, having not been able to get the train. But anyway, so if this episode feels a bit more chaotic than usual, it's because Chris and I are still both very much in recovery, I think.
We need to say a round of applause to the winner of the award that we sponsor.
Well, yes.
And it wasn't rigged, because the winner was Kai Ap Bryn, known as Game and Flames. If you go on Instagram, type Game and Flames. Guy does absolutely mega stuff. So much so that I booked him for our wedding. So he cooked our wedding meal and then wins the award that we sponsor. So it looks slightly dodgy, but it wasn't. It was a surprise for both of us.
Well, I think we should probably have him on the podcast at some point.
We should, actually. We should. He does really, really cool stuff. I really encourage you to check him out. So, yeah. Well
Very
done
good.
to him and everyone else, because it was one of those evenings celebrating something we all really care about. And it's nice. We spend a lot of time saying all the effort for games should be focused on outside of our world. We need to influence anyone we can to try game, because anyone who tries game is a potential friend of ours. But it is nice to celebrate internally those that are doing the best job at that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what last night was all about.
For sure.
So, yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah, right. Well, let's press on then, shall we, Chris? Would you like to introduce our guest?
Absolutely. So today we're going to be delving deep inside your minds. It's absolutely that's a sort of niche topic for a hangover, isn't it? But anyway, our guest has a master's in sports psychology and is doing a PhD in performance psychology. He is a professional sailor and a sports psychologist. He's a shoot captain of a syndicate in Oxfordshire and is going to offer us some interesting insight on a topic which I know George really wants to go into. And I think there's going to be some differing opinions here. So put your hands together, pull over if you're driving, wave to everyone else on the train if you're listening on the train, and give a very warm welcome to Oliver Spensley-Corfield.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you with us, Ollie. And as Chris said, I am very excited about this. But first of all, I'd like to know a little bit about the syndicate that you run.
Yeah, so new syndicate is probably the best way. New but old. So we were at a previous location and sort of got taken away from us, sort of one of a slightly controversial sort of last minute being rug pulled underneath my feet. But we moved on and we found a new location last May. So very, very last minute with 2.5 pens left over from a shoot that was been running sort of 5 years ago. And yeah, we cracked on, pulled it all together, managed to get some birds from somewhere and brought the whole sort of party to a new location.
And you've done pretty well to turn it around in that length of time, really, because, cover crops and all that sort of things, quite a lot to get organised and, presumably negotiate with the farmer over where they were going to go and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we're sort of lucky that the land we're on is a lot of it is in environmental stewardship. So there was a lot of pre-drilled game covered there, and we sort of had to make do. There was a reality of this is what it is. We've got everybody. We're all ready to go. Everybody's keen. let's crack on. And I think that's the joy of our little shoot, in a way, that it is that sense of, right, let's do it.
Did you manage to hold the whole syndicate together from the previous location, like the group? Really?
All of the guns came. Every single one of the guns. They were sort of, right, we're with you. Off we go. And the majority of the beaters, and that team all came across with us. It was my old keeper that sort of did a bit of a dirty on me and the group and pulled the shoot away from us. But it was nice to have that support of actually recognizing the shoot isn't just about the people that run it; it's about everybody that's involved.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. I'm glad you stuck firm on that one. What's the status of the chap who's obviously not in your good books?
So I think they're still running the shoot, but there's a you've got to spin these things. I guess it's a psychologist in me of the positive side that was a shoot that we set up as a group. We got it to a successful point, and it still runs, but I don't think it's the same.
Yeah, it's the soul in all these things, isn't it?
Yeah.
And plans for next season then are in swing now, are they? Or are you about to have your AGM?
No, they're in full swing. We're waiting for it to eventually stop raining and actually be able to get on with some jobs, because it's quite a wet shoot, and don't want to dig up too much land and annoy landowners.
What are the big debates going to be at your AGM? Where are the opinions going in that one?
The AGM, which will be me being a dictator rather than listening to everyone.
So a classic shoot syndicate.
Yeah. What I say goes. I don't know. I think because we're still learning, there's lots to learn, sort of build on from last year, and I think it's more how do we build on things. I'm hoping that we can put some more cover crop in a few different places. But also, number of birds, that's always a classic discussion. How many birds do we actually put down? How does it work? What are the dates? Finalize the dates. I sort of got the dates in my head and I know what they're going to be. And I've sort of told a majority of people what they're going to be, and also given people the option to change dates and avoid clashes. But getting responses from people about clashes is a challenge.
Yeah. Impossible.
This little bit of conversation has gone on longer than it normally does. Normally we're in a hurry to get to the next segment, but I feel like maybe Chris and I are shying away from it a bit. So I'm going to ask you first, Ollie. What's that you're drinking?
I've just gone for the classic gin and tonic.
Very nice. What sort of gin?
I've gone for a Mediterranean lemon infused Bombay Sapphire.
Very
nice.
Just
happened to need finishing.
Yeah, we had that exact point at the weekend, which is we run out of gin, but then we happened to find some Bombay Sapphire at the back of the cupboard. and in a while, it's actually not too bad.
Bombay is one of my favourite gins. I really like it.
But judging by the colour of what's in your glass there, George, you've gone back to your where
Well, yes and no. You will remember that when we had the Delaney's on, I promised that I would try an American whiskey. So I've got Woodford Reserve Kentucky Bourbon Whiskey. And I think if I was feeling a bit better, I'd really enjoy it. But
how is it?
It's very nice. It's just oaked, so that's the sort of main vibe I'm getting.
It's quite different to your usual style.
Yes, it is. It's nothing like as sweet. But it's really nice. It's really nice. I shall enjoy drinking it over the next couple of weeks. Just maybe not today. Chris, what have you got?
I went to the wine rack, cracked open a 2015 Margaux for a Friday afternoon. Because why not? I did actually say to my wife as she was wandering outside with the kids, fancy a glass of wine tonight? She was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, great. That's sorted. So the rest of that will go at bath time.
It's kill or cure, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very nice though, but it's one of these glasses that the last sip right at the end of the pod will be the nicest of the glass. So shame.
All wine gets better the further down the glass you go, though.
Yes, for a bunch of reasons, that isn't it?
Yes. So what we'd like to do now, Ollie, is turn to our post bag and we ask our listeners to send in various bits of correspondence. The first segment that we have is called Whose Bird Is It Anyway? And it's when we ask our listeners to send in their shooting confessions and quandaries and queries. And in fact, this is, I think, we've always said confessions and quandaries and queries, and this is the first time we've had an actual confession. And it's from somebody I've decided to call Foghorn Leghorn, who has written, "Entering the shooting confessional, my sins are entirely my own, and the wonderful dog in question should be absolved of all wrongdoing on the premise that there's no such thing as a bad dog, only a bad trainer. On a day at a great friend's small and wonderful shoot in Wales, I was incredibly proud of the sterling work that my then young Labrador did on her first proper outing as a peg dog. Throughout the day, birds from around the peg were dropped lovingly at my feet by my faithful companion, and I felt pretty pleased with the way things were turning out. Buoyed by her faultless performance on the day so far, I sent her off on a more ambitious retrieve. She'd gone quite far back and was taking a worryingly long time to return. I wanted to avoid a Fenton moment, so waited patiently, but suspected that something was up. My worst fears were confirmed when she reappeared. The problem was that she was not carrying the hen pheasant I'd hoped to see, but an altogether different hen, a chicken from a nearby estate cottage. My appalled host marched me, carrying the chicken, to knock on the door of his tenant, where I apologised profusely and assured her that, due to the soft mouth of my dog, the chicken was just a little bit ruffled, but after a rest would be fine. The lady looked distraught, but I tried to further play the whole thing down by going on to say that I had every confidence that she would be enjoying the hen's eggs for breakfast the following morning. I then placed the hen down on the ground, where it took 2 steps and dropped stone dead. Its owner let out a shrill, grief-induced gasp. This was a very bad business and extremely embarrassing. I compensated the lady for her lost hen and fled the scene as fast as possible. I apologised again to the chicken, its owner, and my host, but also to my dog for having put her in that position, and expected her to know at that tender age that there was a difference between a pheasant and a minding its own business Rhode Island red. What should I have done, or could I still do, to make amends?"
That's so awkward. Can you imagine being in that scenario?
Do you know what? This exact thing happened on my uncle's shoot this year when we went to shoot with him in Norfolk. His dog ate one of my great aunt's chickens, of which she is very fond, and there was a somewhat embarrassed scene. And I tell you what he did: he very quickly went out and bought a couple more chickens.
But when you say very fond, do you mean like named chickens?
Oh, very much named. I mean, they're not pets. They are, but you know, she's.
But if they're named, you can't really just pop out and buy 3 more. It's not.
It's not quite like replacing the hamster with an identical looking hamster. I appreciate, but I think, speaking as a chicken keeper myself, I think the real ambition is mostly more chickens. So I think we all accept that chickens have a finite lifespan, and that sooner or later a fox or something's going to get them. And certainly my aunts are all completely free range, so you know they come and go.
Ollie, what do you reckon the going rate for a recompense for a chicken is?
Well, I was going to say just two for the price of one. By the sounds of it, 2 chickens for the one that was taken.
So on using George's mantra of sort of it's all about having more, take the opportunity to allow them to advance their flock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it's mentioned here that it's a Rhode Island red, and those are very good layers, Rhode Island reds, but they're quite boring. They're just your sort of bog standard, you know, little brown hen. So if you want to really push the boat out, you can go and get one of those crazy looking. Have you seen Polish chickens? They've got a sort of hairdo.
Oh yeah,
and they're fantastic. So that could be an added bonus as you get an absolutely mad looking one.
I feel like we've stumbled into George's sort of niche here.
My secret passion. It's shooting, fly fishing, and chickens.
So Rhode Island Reds, are they the sort of the traditional battery chicken type chicken?
They're kind of your bog standard little red hen. Yeah.
So replacing it with one of them or a Burford or something is absolutely the way to go.
Yeah.
Another suggestion could be sort of a subscription to an egg package where you just get a box of eggs delivered sort of monthly. Sort of.
That almost could be seen as an insult of like, Your chickens were a stupid idea anyway. This is what you should have done.
Oh, it's very good. I think it's nice that we've had a proper confession. Normally when with these things, it's somebody else going, "This bloke on my shoot did this, and I think it was shit." But this guy has handed himself in, and I have a lot of respect for that.
Well, I don't know if he did hand himself in because the host.
I mean to us. He's confessed to us.
To us, yes. But he has confessed to us. But I'm intrigued about the scenario because the appalled host marched him down. That takes some doing to march one of your guns down to the angry neighbour whose chicken you've just dispatched. I mean, if I was put in that position, I think I'd be like, please, could you go knock on their door and explain what's happened? I don't think I could march someone down there and knock on the door for them.
Do you feel it's like a naughty schoolboy by the back of the collar?
Exactly. That's the vision I had in my mind. To be marched down to someone's house to tell them that you got their chicken and then it die in front of them. I mean, that's one of the year's low moments, I think.
There's almost a confession on the host of the shoot there, isn't there? Sort of, it could have just disappeared and not really been a thing. There was technically no witnesses. So he's he's the person that's done
could have blamed the fox.
Exactly.
Yes. So obviously his host was watching. Well, unless he admitted straight away to the host, look what my dog's just done. Or he was laughing.
or was it when the chicken got to the game cart?
Yeah, exactly. Excuse me, sir.
You don't think then, I don't know, some sage and onion would have been an appropriate recompense?
I mean, so in terms of what he still could do, I think best left. I wouldn't go back there. I don't know. You guys?
I've made my views clear. More chickens. No, the tenant is going to be very happy with more chickens.
So you mean like one a year anonymously delivered in a box?
Maybe this is a new business. It's subscription chickens. I like the subscription egg idea, but subscription chickens is one I would definitely sign up for. A new chicken every month, different breed.
I was going to say, what frequency are you going for? Monthly, and obviously on the website you can choose daily. It depends how free range they are. I like this subscription chickens. So that's what he also could do.
Yeah, that's the solution. Right, moving on. Come on, move on.
Definitely. Right, we've got some correspondence. Oh no, hold on 1 second. For those that didn't get it, because I got this one. Foghorn Leghorn, George?
Well, yes, it's the Looney Tunes big rooster, who I suspect is from where my whiskey's from. I think he's from Kentucky or Texas.
Yes.
No, probably Kentucky. So yeah, big old cockerel from Looney Tunes.
So we have some correspondence here from someone that we shall call Lazarus, who says, my grandfather left me his Winchester 101 in 20 bore, as well as a pheasant he had mounted. I never got to go shooting with him before he passed, so both are sentimental to me. I plan to mount the first nice cock pheasant I shoot with the gun next to his. The dilemma is this. I have a friend who's a taxidermist who specialises in birds, but she's not that great. And this might be the only bit of taxidermy I have done. I want it to be nice. Should I feel obliged to go with my friend and risk a slightly deranged bird, or risk hurting the friend's feelings? He says hold on a second. A friend who's a taxidermist who specialises in birds, but she's not that great. You know when someone's like committed to specialising and she's still not very good.
Oh my goodness. Do you know what? I love bad taxidermy. I think it's the funniest thing. And I think all taxidermied birds look slightly deranged. And I think it's because of the little glass beads they use for the eyes make them look, I mean, pheasants and chickens, they all look bonkers anyway. If you ever look into the eye of a chicken, you see pure madness. So I feel like it would be quite appropriate if the pheasant was a bit deranged.
Ollie?
Yeah. So linking the two stories, the correspondence, I've got a little story on this one, actually. So my other half, who helps out with the shoot as well, she comes along and does a bit of keepering and just, feeds them. We had a white albinoed pheasant, and she became very fond of this pheasant. She named him Kenny, and Kenny lived in pen 3, and whenever she went to feed, she'd whistle him and he'd come running and he'd jump up into her arms and she carried him around. So, and I was like, you can't get too attached to the pheasants. Anyway, she had this whole thing. Anyone shoots Kenny, they're in for a big fine. So it's probably, I don't know, halfway through the season, and my brother comes over the radio. He beats on the shoot and says, and he takes my other half, Temby's dog, and he says, "Is Temby around?" And I was like, "Oh, here we go. The Kenny's gone missing." Anyway, her dog had chased Kenny into the side of the pen, and he'd hit his head a bit too hard and was no longer functioning.
No.
So her very own dog had basically caused the demise of Kenny. And now we are waiting for the taxidermist to bring Kenny back.
What a story to link those bits of correspondence.
That is absolutely magical.
We don't know how the taxidermist is going to be. It could be another deranged pheasant, but we'll see.
That's epic. That's a perfect story as well. So where's the bit of taxidermy going to go? Where's the chicken going to go?
The white pheasant. The white pheasant.
The pheasant or the white pheasant.
Oh, sorry, the white pheasant.
That's TBC. I mean, the taxidermist said it would be about a month, and we're now 3 months in. So who knows what's going on?
Yeah.
So, what's your feelings over Lazarus? What he should do here? Go with the risk of the specialist bird taxidermist, who's not very good, or go elsewhere?
I think risk it, and then if it is really out there, sell it to George.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe make it the first brace that you shoot, one to the friend, one to a pro. And then you're guaranteed of getting at least one good one, but also know that you've been supporting your friend in their attempt to become a specialist.
I like what you've done there. Make sure you shoot a left and right when you do this. Just simply make sure. I'm absolutely with you guys on this as well. I love awful taxidermy. I think it's much more enjoyable than really good taxidermy. Really good taxidermy passes you by, you just expect it. Awful stuff, everyone stops and talks about it.
Have you seen, there's a guy on YouTube who makes taxidermy drones. It's the maddest thing you've ever seen. It's absolutely bonkers. So he's done a cat, and at the end of each leg, there's rotor blades. It's bananas.
Oh my goodness, I'm Googling that in a minute. Thank you.
Well, I think we've got a solution there, though.
Yeah.
So there's the answer, Lazarus. Bring your pheasants back to life and make it pheasants, not pheasant.
Yeah. And then send a picture of the specialist's work to pod@cansonpegs.com for us to enjoy.
Very good idea. Now, Chris, big stuff this now. As everybody will know, in February, we were running a competition with our friends at Ely, the cartridge company. We asked you to send in the funniest stories that happened on your shoot this season, and we've had loads of great entries, and we were going to choose the best one to win a slab of Ely cartridges of their choosing. So we had loads of great entries, many of which the judging panel, by which I mean Chris and I, have deemed to be unbroadcastable. But after much deliberation, we have chosen a winner, which was sent in by Tom. And here is that story from Tom. I'm part of a farm shoot in Shropshire. I'd been beating there for a couple of seasons before being offered the opportunity of a gun, just as I had bought a Cocker Spaniel to improve my beating capabilities. It has become clear that I should have got a lab, but that's another story. On one of our days this season, the first drive of the morning had the guns lined out with their backs to a small wood. Whenever we shoot this drive, we always sweep through the wood behind us to pick any downed birds that inevitably drop into it. After the drive, the beaters had a long walk to the next drive, so we guns took our time before making a move to our next pegs. While we were chatting, we were continually disturbed by a particularly noisy crow sitting atop one of the taller trees in the wood behind us. After much deliberating over which of the guns would have to get their gun out of the slip, somebody did and dispatched the crow. Another gun spaniel immediately ran into the wood, much to the displeasure of its owner, and a minute later emerged not with a crow, but with a partridge. He still reminds us that his dog can turn crows into partridge, much like water to wine. The beaters could probably hear our laughter halfway across the next field.
I like this. Water to wine. It's a good one.
I feel like if Jesus had turned crows into partridges, he'd have more followers.
The dog's got skills.
Yeah. So Tom's going to get his slab of cartridges from Ely. We'll be in touch with Tom to get his details and all that sort of thing and arrange that. Meanwhile, Foghorn Leghorn, Lazarus, Tom, and also you, Ollie, are the newest members of the most noble order of the Garters and will very soon be in receipt of a set of the much coveted Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters. If you've got a shooting confession, quandary, or a query that you'd like to send us for our guests to help you with, or if you've got an unpopular opinion or you'd like to tell us about a forgotten drive with a particularly good name and you'd like a set of garters, drop us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com.
It really helps if they are broadcastable, though, because it is lovely for you and I just to read unbroadcastable stories, of which the ratio is worryingly high. But if you could just maybe cut a couple of bits out so we can air them, that'd be great.
This is the bit I've been looking forward to. So the reason I wanted to get Ollie on the podcast is because I've been thinking a lot about the first shoot day I ever covered with Guns on Pegs. I was very conscious of being a representative of Guns on Pegs, but also very conscious of being that bloke from Guns on Pegs and wanting to shoot well, so that it didn't get back to my colleagues who'd never seen me shoot just how bad I am, and also so that the people I was shooting with thought highly of Guns on Pegs rather than it's a company staffed by jokers who don't know what they're doing. I was worried about looking like a charlatan, basically. I'd managed. It turned out that it was going to be a driven partridge day in Hampshire, and I thought that's absolutely my bread and butter. I'm very comfortable in that scenario, and I'd kind of managed to calm my nerves a bit. And then I turned up on the day, and it was sort of the great and the good of the shooting media world. Field Sports Channel were there, Shooting Times was there. There was some bloke who'd got an Olympic bronze medal for double trap, and I immediately sort of went back into this sort of slightly terrified mode and shot like a complete idiot all day, worse than I've ever shot. And actually, I think almost that whole first season after joining Guns on Pegs, I shot badly because I was so conscious of this whole wanting to shoot well because of my new job that it's really affected my shooting. And I'm convinced that it was entirely a mental thing. So that was what I was thinking about. And then Chris and I have been talking about it as well, that we have this sort of weird double standard in shooting where you kind of, it's not really the done thing to be seen to be trying or to talk about how well you've shot. It's kind of okay to say you shot badly in a kind of self-deprecating way.
Yeah.
Potentially that's also problematic. But then we've got this sort of duty that we all talk about and we're all very aware of, that we have to be respectful of the quarry and shoot as well as we can. But those two things don't quite add up. So we don't often talk about how to be better at shooting. And we just sort of pitch up mildly hungover and hope everything works out. And I think probably more often than not, we're doing ourselves a disservice. So we all know that you can go and shoot loads of clays and practice and focus on technique. But I think that the mental side of things, the head game, is probably something that we don't think about enough. So the first question for you, Ollie, is on that morning when I turned up at that shoot and sort of froze, what would you have advised somebody in that scenario to do in order to get themselves back in some sort of even keel to approach that scenario?
I think the first thing to point out is it's normal. And that's the thing with everything within the psychology of performance is it's a natural response to that sort of raised anxiety, that sense of, oh, everyone's looking at me. And I think that's the first thing to sort of acknowledge, that also people that seem like they're not nervous will also be nervous. It would be unnormal for somebody not to be nervous.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
And then in your scenario, the stakes are raised because you're like, well, pressure's on. Everyone's looking at me. People care about what I do here.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. They
probably didn't, did they?
Well, I don't know. They probably didn't. But what's often interesting is when someone thinks you should be a good shot, they want you to shoot badly. Like everyone wants to go on a day with someone who was in the Olympics and watch them miss both barrels, don't they? That's what they want to happen. And that, that if you're in that situation, I think, and I totally understand what you're meaning. And it's been years since I sort of felt like that because I've been doing this for so long. But it's an odd feeling. Sometimes we get invited to shoots and people say, oh, that's the bloke from Guns on Pegs or something. You're like, oh, bloody hell, what do you mean? I've got a name, and it's and they do expect you. Oh, that's your job. You must shoot well. Every clay competition I go to, well, this is your job, Chris. You're going to shoot well, and you're like, what do you mean? My job's sitting at a desk. But the pressure is on, and it's how you respond to that, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. How do we respond to it, or how do we ignore it? Acknowledge it's there, but ignore the fact that it is a thing. Because if you think about it like holding a piece of paper up in front of your face, so it's like up in front of your face, and all you can see is that piece of paper, and that's like the pressure, that's like the situation, that's like what is everybody thinking about me up in front of your face, and then you try and push it away from you, like I'm going to ignore it, it's not going to be a thing, and you push it out in front of your arms. Your arms get tired, your arms continually get tired, and you're like, oh, this is hard work, this is exhausting. Again, doesn't create good performance. So then you put it on your lap and you forget about it and you move forward and you're productive. But as soon as you stand up, it falls on the floor, you have to pick it up again and it's there. So it's getting to the point where it exists, but you can fold it up and put it in your pocket and move forward.
And I mean, in the world of sports, people often talk about players who perform best under pressure. So is that just down to the individual, or are there things that you can do to kind of work with the pressure and use it to your advantage?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. People do work better with pressure, and we all do. There's a lot of research that suggests that a certain level of anxiety, performance pressure, is a good level. If we go into something super relaxed, super chilled out, then we'll be just as bad as if we are over aroused and overstimulated. So it's finding that optimal zone of functioning where you're really, really switched in, you're really looking at what you're doing, you know what it's doing, you feel comfortable, and that is different for different people, but also different for different scenarios.
Really interesting, this, because I think when you were talking about nervousness, I can't remember ever feeling, well, for a long time. I definitely remember when I was younger, but feeling sort of nervous on a shoot day. But I definitely get excited, and that forms that sort of alert response where I'm like, I really want that really good bird to come towards me. I really, really want it to come towards me because I really, really want to try, and that's a slightly different thing. But you're then, I imagine that's creating this sort of tension in your, like this excitement to try and achieve what it is you want to get, which the nervousness also sort of does in a way. Is that right?
Exactly that. Yeah. Your nervousness, it sort of creates your focus. It creates that ability to focus on what is important, to take in all those cues that are around you, whether it's, the hearing the beaters coming towards you, where the wind's coming from, what the person next to you is doing, being able to ignore the dog whining next to you. It's that ability to lock in on what actually is going to enable you to perform well. And if we go back to George, your situation is, what are you concentrating in that situation? Are you concentrating on, raising the gun and placing the gun on your shoulder? Are you concentrating on your footwork? Are you concentrating on leaning into the gun? What you're not. You're concentrating on the person next to you or what they're thinking and all of those factors. So you become extremely narrow-minded and sort of tunnel visioned onto the things that could go wrong.
So you're focused on completely the wrong stuff in that, and so then you need to find a way of breaking out of that cycle so that you can focus on what you do need to focus. So are there some techniques that you employ with your sports clients to help them to focus on the right things and not the external factors that might be distracting?
Yeah. So to start with, it's a realization that you have no control over the outcome. So in a sense, we're looking at this like a competition. We're looking at who can shoot more on that day, or I need to not embarrass myself. Yeah. You cannot control how many how many targets that you hit compared to the person next to you compared to the person next to them. You have no control over them or what they're doing, and especially within shooting, where you have no control of what comes over you, even. So you need to step away of what isn't controllable and start focusing on what is controllable. You're controlling your controllables.
Yeah.
So you're focusing on the process of high performance rather than the outcome of high performance.
That's so interesting. And so that's related then to, you hear about cricketers who always put their socks on in the same order. And, Rafa Nadal's kind of pre-serve routine and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's tied in with that process. So in the shooting scenario on the peg, would it be a question of, when you get on your peg, trying to follow some sort of routine to sort of focus the mind and get you in that right frame of mind?
Yeah. So even from before getting to your peg, you might have some kind of pre-performance routine that enables you to be in a better frame of mind, but also physically in a better place. We're talking very much about the mental side of things, but how much does our mental side of things influence our physical side? As soon as we start to have that sort of sense of overwhelming pressure and that anxiety starts to sneak in, we start to sort of roll our shoulders in, we get tense, we can feel our hands getting sweaty, we're hot, we're like, there's a physical element to it.
That was how I felt I was shooting on that day, as I felt everything was tight and I was not swinging the gun properly. And
you're probably poking. Yeah, you definitely would have been swinging through. You would have been stopping the gun, all that sort of stuff.
Well, yeah, and not moving, it felt like my feet were in concrete and I was definitely hot. Yeah. It was absolutely roasting that day. But it just felt like the what I was thinking about was causing me to that physical response was to get tense. And then of course, you miss the first one, you miss the next one, and then you get even more tense and it becomes a sort of doom spiral. So I guess then the next question is when the wheels have fallen off or are looking wobbly, how do you steady the ship and get back on course?
Yeah. It's hard to. Once the horse has bolted, bringing it back is the hardest thing. So preparation and is the better version. So if we think about our brain and how our brain works, is when we start to reach that point of being stressed, we release cortisol, which then influences the hippocampus, which then stops us talking to the prefrontal cortex. And that's the part that's the logical part that makes us make better decisions. So we sort of go into this almost like a caveman part of our brain of, okay, what do I need to do to save myself and protect myself? I'm focusing on everything else and I'm more tense because that's what I need to do. And rather than being like, actually, what do I need to do here? What is it that's going to enable me to shoot better? Like you mentioned your feet being in like concrete. So it might just be like, right, I just need to shuffle my feet around. I might need to just relax my shoulders, like jump up and down a bit, take a deep breath. There is the really obvious things that people say over and over again. They're obvious for a reason. So like that sense of taking a breath can just change your whole physiology, which then can control your psychology.
This whole conversation is fascinating because right at the start, George talked about this sort of etiquette in shooting, or what's the done thing, and we're talking about performance in a. I don't like to call it a sport. I hate that word. It's not in a. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, in shooting, where we don't ever really talk on the day about performance, or as you say, it's always talked about in a self-deprecating manner or just not spoken about. But at the same time, we have a duty to perform well, and we all are very on it with that, in a sense that if you don't, not from a missing point of view, but I'm talking about, wounding and things like that. Mm-hmm. And therefore, this really does matter.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. We've got all these weird things going on in our strange little world and all these ways in which we supposedly should act. And yet this is actually quite an important topic if you want to, shoot cleanly.
And I think that's a really good point. It's about perspective, isn't it? Like sort of gathering your perspective of why am I here? What am I doing here? Does it really matter? And it's easy to have sort of theoretical perspective, but the closer we can get to that on a shoot day of, no, I'm here to have a good time, and I'm here to enjoy what I'm doing, but also, like you said, a duty of care to protect animal welfare from that perspective is hugely important. But how do we get to that point where we are just solely focused on us and not on other people? And I think that's the crux of the matter. To go back to George's example, is how do we just focus on us? And it's like, if we start reviewing performance in the sense of every time I go shooting, I get better, rather than, oh, how many have I shot today? Or it's not necessarily the outcome that's better. It's like, oh, at the end of today, do you know what? My gun placement was so much better, or I swung the gun through the air this much better today, or I wasn't poking as much, or my feet felt like I felt more relaxed. If we quantify our day out based upon those things, then potentially going forward, we're going to be feeling more comfortable and a better place to shoot better.
It's so interesting that, because it always winds me up when England have lost a test match and the captain or the coach comes out and says, well, we're going to take away the positives, and they've just been pumped. And they come out and go, we're going to take away the positives. But it sounds to me like that is actually quite sensible from a psychological perspective, to go, well, yeah, we got beaten, but we've learned some stuff. This went well, that went well, that kind of thing, rather than focusing on, who played the bad shot or who didn't bowl very well.
Absolutely. Or that's like, yeah, this always focus on positives. Like, what worked well, even better if, is something we do when we review projects or events and stuff like that. It's always looking for the positives. I remember one of the most fascinating exercises of the last X number of years was COVID. Find me in the depths of COVID, we had a team meeting. We're like, find all the positives, go, write them all down. And there were loads of positives coming out of it. And it was a really helpful exercise, because that was tough. And if you did focus on all those positives, you completely reframed your mind about how you approach the situation.
Yeah, exactly. And just to be clear, we're not talking about positive thinking makes everything better. You can't, someone that's lost all their hair and is bald, they can't positively think their hair back. Like, don't get me wrong.
I bet some of them have tried.
There are realities and there are facts, but yeah, by shifting the perspective to what are the opportunities that I'm presented with here? Your day where you are meeting all those people new in your job. What's the opportunity for me today? What could I gain from being here, rather than, oh, everyone is looking at me, what could go wrong for me? You're automatically setting yourself up for sort of failure, because you're going into that sort of filing cabinet of your brain and going, these are all the things that could go wrong, rather than actually, what are the things that could go right?
It's so true. Can I bring it on to a topic which definitely comes up every shoot day? Alcohol. There's loads. This is always a thing, right? After 11s type thing, usually there's some slow gin knocking around. And often someone will go, oh, no, I won't yet. Ruins my shooting. Someone else goes, give me some of that. I need it.
Swing corrector,
exactly. All that stuff. What's your take on all of this?
So, I mean, I think darts is the comparison, and not like shooting is anything like darts, but we saw
it's really similar. I think it's really similar. Of all the sports out there, that has got to be the closest, no?
Probably is.
I mean, judging by some of the participants and the shapes of people I see in the shooting field, I think they're pretty similar. But anyway, I've seen a lot of Luke Littlers out shooting.
But I'm pretty sure that alcohol is now banned in darts, because it has that relaxing effect. No,
it's not. You can drink before. You just can't drink on stage.
Can't drink on stage. You're allowed to. Is it?
Because it's about. I think it's not the right look or something. I can agree with that.
So the majority of sports, obviously, no one does it anyway. But yeah, there is an argument that alcohol does sort of suppress your nervous system, relaxes you a bit more. But also, at what point do you realize that you've had too much and that you shouldn't be drinking anymore? It sort of takes that decision-making ability away. So, yeah.
Well, there's thinking about darts, and then I guess the other one that would be quite close is archery. And I think there's a phenomenon in archery where people find that they can't release the string I forget what it's called, but there's this phenomenon where people kind of just are unable to actually let go. They get kind of frozen. And I think it happens to some rifle shots as well. And then I guess maybe it's sort of slightly tied in with the yips, a bowler who suddenly finds they can't let go of the ball.
So I struggle with this sometimes.
Oh, wow.
So especially more on sort of bigger days. And I find that, so Tembi loads for me. She usually stands next to me and just goes, "Will you bloody shoot something?" And that's like, oh yeah, this is what I'm here to do, because I'm not I'm almost overwhelmed with it, actually so much choice of actually, rather than again going through that process of right, picking a bird, moving the gun, picking it up, pulling the trigger. I'm just like all over the place trying to decide what to do, and I'm frozen in that decision. So I think, yeah,
I can absolutely relate to that. And I
all
think
those
that
big days you shoot, Chris.
All right. I'll make it worse. It happened on grouse. But the reason it did, though, is because it's not something I get to do like once in a blue moon, right? And therefore, your pre-routine has got so much more excitement in it. That builds pressure. When a covey of grouse at the end of the season come towards you, the ability for you to literally just make no shot selection is just so, or the chances of it are so high because of that pre-routine point that you're making, which is you've basically heightened yourself up so that when this happens, you're screwed. Whereas if you're totally calm before that's happening and you've sort of visualized it, I imagine you'll be much better at it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happens if you shoot lots of pheasant days. That won't happen because you've essentially visualized it through practice.
Yes. Yeah. And I was going to mention visualization. You've mentioned visualization there. That's I think a hugely powerful tool that can be used. And again, it's not necessarily focusing on the outcome. It's focusing on the process of watching yourself from you being you. So you're there. You're in the first person. What are you doing? What does it feel like to have the gun in your hands? What does it feel like to place that, to move the gun through the air? How does your body feel? How does your arms feel? Your legs, your feet, everything about it. What does that feel like to have that ability? What are you seeing? Where are you pulling the trigger? How are you picking up that bird? All those kinds of sort of things have a huge benefit. That visualization is used by all sorts of different sports people to gain that competitive advantage. And especially, we take whatever the whole season off, pretty much the off season off, and we're not shooting as much, so we can continue practicing by visualizing.
Do you know what I was going to ask? What can we do outside the season beyond just going and shooting a load of clays? And it seems to me that that fabled bathtub bird actually may have some benefit. It's not just self-congratulatory smugness when you're in the bath with a glass of whiskey after a day's shooting. You can actually do that, by the swimming pool in the summer or whatever, and you're getting better at shooting by doing so. That's so interesting. Here's another thing that's just occurred to me, which is for ages and ages and ages, I used to have a real problem when I was standing on a peg that's quite open, where you can see the birds coming from a really long way away. And I would always end up poking at them.
That's a classic, that is.
And because again, now that I think about it, because I get tense, it's coming now, not now, when, now, now, and then you're behind it or up the side or you poke at it. And I started to look at my feet when I saw the bird coming my way and counting to 5 and then shooting it in a much more kind of snap shooting style. And the problem, I mean, I still miss a few, still miss my fair share, but not anything like in the same way, and feel much more relaxed about the shot.
Exactly that. You've created a mental skill to dealing with it. Looking at your feet, counting to 5 seconds, then you shoot, rather than just watching it the whole time. It's again, you're taking that time. You're recognizing what you need to do, rather than that hesitation over a long period of time.
hesitation as well. Yeah, and that's tied in with that indecision concept as well.
You've got to really want to get it as well. I think
But Chris, you were saying earlier that you're quite relaxed on the peg in general, and is that because you just for you a shoot day is just an inherently relaxing thing?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I can't. I always drink the night before a shoot day, usually quite a bit, and that's mainly because I get too excited and I love seeing everyone. I just have a few pints or whatever. Always in the morning of a shoot day is a little bit of a headache, but I actually think it works really well for me in a sense that I'm just really relaxed, really happy, totally chilled out, not too relaxed at all because that would go too far the other way. Like excited. To come back to your earlier point about the sort of effect that does in the same way of nervousness. And then, I find I stand on the peg and I don't suffer from that particular point. But if I'm missing, it's just not good enough. It's not like a nerves thing. It's just, poor technique. But yeah, I'm wondering actually whether the few drinks the night before most shoot days actually plays to my advantage.
Do you think that's because you get to the point where you're just like, it doesn't really matter? I don't really care. Not because you don't care, because you want to have a good day, but you're like, well, it doesn't really matter what other people think. It doesn't really matter what happens.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Definitely arrived at that point. I remember my first ever day shooting. I remember the first birds I shot. I shot a hen bird and a drake mallard on my first day shooting on this little syndicate. I'd never forgotten how nervous I was and the pressure and what everyone else is thinking. And am I doing the right thing? Is the gun the right direction? All these billion things that you're thinking about through your head. And that is just experience, isn't it? They go with experience. And I think definitely experience comes into it. But yeah, it's fascinating thinking about it.
Sometimes you'll be on a shoot day and there'll be somebody who's quite new to shooting. And sometimes they can get so overexcited that they start taking shots that are sort of unrealistic, or maybe even sort of doing a bit of poaching because they don't quite understand about the etiquette, but also have just got so very excited about being on a shoot day that they've kind of gone out the other side and are doing things that are inadvisable. And it's again, we're both pretty experienced shots, Chris, but and we're thinking about it from a slightly different perspective, but actually being able to maintain a sort of balance when you're on the peg.
At the end of every
so
briefing,
important, isn't it?
End of every briefing, have fun, be safe, is pretty much, for a use of different words, but most briefings will end with that. And that be safe point is the critical bit, but the have fun is just don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And I think when you do see someone who's early on in their shooting life, you definitely watch them really worrying about every little thing. And I think if the best thing you can say is just don't worry about it, get a few shots off, but don't think about it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Take the pressure away.
I guess it's changing the focus to, why do you go on a shoot day? What do you enjoy about that shoot day? And for the majority of us, it's actually not necessarily about the birds and the shooting. It's about the whole day. It's the whole experience. It's about being with friends. It's about having chats. It's about being out in the countryside. It's about seeing different parts of the countryside. There's so many different things that we all talk about when we say it's not just about the shooting.
No, but maybe it's about the shooting because of a fear of failure.
Yeah.
I reckon a lot of people, it's not about the shooting unless it goes wrong when it's all about the shooting.
Yeah.
But it's true, but at the same time, so, George, think back to that day. Can you remember how many birds the person on the peg next to you shot?
I haven't the faintest idea. I'm only dimly aware of some that I shot. So,
and that's the reality. Once you leave that day, no one remembers anyway.
Well, and the mad thing is that there were a couple that I shot that I remember to this day. I was like, actually, that was pretty damn good. But even now in my memory, it's the missing that sticks there better. And it's only when I think more harder about the day, I'm like, oh yeah, but actually on that third drive, I was pretty good.
Yeah.
That's the thing. People only remember like a really good shot or a dangerous one.
Yeah.
Like you remember. You often people remember. Gosh, that person was particularly good. Like they really shot well, and that person. Oh God, that's the sort of thing people remember.
Yeah.
They don't remember anything in between, which is literally 8 out of 9 guns in the line, or even 9 out of 9.
Yeah. But we're so busy telling ourselves that everyone cares about us, and they don't.
It's an inherently egotistical position, isn't it? Nobody gives a crap. But also, like the other thing that I sort of thought about subsequently was, on a busy-ish drive, they've got other things going on. They're worrying about their shooting. They're probably all standing there having the same thoughts as you. Oh Christ, it's the guy with, look, there's someone got a camera on me, or that sort of thing.
So someone once said to me, a client once said to me that they said, I used to hate going to the gym because I thought that everybody was judging me and they were looking at me and thinking that I was overweight and why am I here and all of those things that are common to a lot of people. And then they said they had a realization that if someone is spending their 50 quid a month to join that gym, to go to the gym, to look at me and call me fat, then the joke's on them. And and that's the reality. People are paying for their pegs. If their enjoyment is to turn up and just, judge the person next to them, that's great. Well done.
They won't last long, will they?
No.
The judger. That's so true. That's a really good way of thinking of it. So the next scenario then, maybe a tip or two for you talked about the bird, George, coming towards you for a long period of time. Put that in the scenario on the small syndicate where the bag is 20
and everyone is watching you.
Now what?
It's the same thing though, right? It's be relaxed.
You need to do more in your head, definitely. Surely.
But there's also the fun of it in that way. Not necessarily as the person that's doing the shooting, there's a fun side to that of like, oh, everyone's looking at me, the pressure's on here, I'm bound to miss this because everyone is looking at me. And as soon as you say I am bound to miss this, it's like
you're game over.
You're done. It's like a golfer going into they could be whatever -10 going into the final hole in front of the clubhouse on the 18th hole. Everyone's looking, everyone's staring, and they're like, whatever you do not hit it in the bunker. Do not hit in the bunker. And all they're focusing on is hitting in the bunker. So guess what? They hit it in the bunker.
Yeah.
So, we are victims of our own thoughts a lot of the time.
So I think I've got a new resolution for myself from this. And this is actually tied in, I suppose, with the other psychological aspect of shooting that I think we should probably just briefly touch on, which is the benefits to mental well-being of being out in the countryside. My new approach, whenever I'm on a day where I'm feeling that sort of pressure, or if the wheels have come off a bit, is to stop thinking about the shooting altogether and to focus on my surroundings, the bird song, the wind in the trees, the sound of the beaters, all that stuff, because that is as much what I love about the day as anything. Maybe even, take the time to watch somebody else shooting for a bit because I love watching my friends shoot. And that, I think, is going to be my tactic to recenter myself and allow me to shoot I think the shoot to be the best shot I can be, I think, is that phrase I'm going to.
And that is the reality of it. We can only be, I think, Chris, you mentioned it earlier, you can only... Sometimes you'll miss things because of poor technique, because you're doing things wrong. So you can only be as good as you can be at that moment in time. Yes, we can go and practice, put hours into the clays and get better. We can't magic ourselves better.
Yeah. Don't think about it. Just really don't think about it. And if you have to think about it, just think miss in front.
But so a question for you both in a way, what would make you a better shot from a technique perspective? If I could wave a magic wand as a sports psychologist in a way, what would actually
practice?
Practice is practice. I think technique-wise, I have a tendency to get a bit leaden-footed, don't move my feet properly. And then the other thing is a particular bird sort of quartering over my right shoulder I get in a pickle and forget which shoulder I'm supposed to drop, and then end up in a horrible mess. So that's a very clear technique thing.
It's a really interesting question, this. I don't know if this is the wrong answer, but I honestly think I'd shoot better if someone stood behind me and scored it. I'd feel like I'd respond better to the game of the situation. Whereas I don't think about it like that when I'm shooting. Just enjoy the time, and maybe sometimes I miss because I'm not like supremely focused on it. Whereas I'm just like, oh, it's a great shot, George, and I'll just have and I'll shoot at this one here on the right type thing.
What if there was someone standing behind you heckling, which is typically what I get when I've got someone standing with me?
I don't think that would work. I think I'd really struggle.
Whenever Misha stands on the peg with me and I miss one, she goes, "Well, why'd you miss that one?" Like, well, if I knew that, it wouldn't have happened.
And that's exactly what the dog does. I find that the dog's glance of what was wrong with that one, like it doesn't look like I'll be picking that, and they don't even have to say anything. There's just these little eye look towards you. It's just the most off-putting thing in the world, and you're like, it's okay, I will get one for you this drive. Just hold fire.
Actually, on those, when you have a particular bird that you tend, so again, because I know that I sometimes get in a muddle with dropping the wrong shoulder and getting in a pickle with that particular bird. When I see that bird coming, that is that shot that I know I struggle with, I reckon I get again into this sort of spiral where, because I know I have a problem with that, I'm more likely to cock it up, and that if I just let my instincts take over, I'd probably shoot it better. But I'm actually just overthinking it in that moment, and that a sort of reactive shot rather than a planned shot would be better.
Yeah, sometimes just trusting that you've got that in you and you can do it. That sense of autonomy and allowing your muscle memory to take over, which is sometimes really useful.
Shooting's such an instinctive thing. If you've been doing it for a bit and you have muscle memory, then that is probably the best thing you can do, I imagine. Just your body is far more capable of doing this than your head, as it were.
and that's when it comes into things like not moving your feet, is when you can go, right, okay, my focus for today, my goal for today is to move my feet more. Ignore everything else. Ignore where you're pulling the trigger, how you're moving your body. My focus is just to work on moving my feet. Everything else put into autopilot, but deliberately focus on moving your feet, and then you'll shoot better because you're moving your feet and you're focusing on that.
Talking of muscle memory, I got absolutely blown yesterday morning, and we've all been in this situation when you're in a rush on a commute and you go to an escalator and the escalator isn't turned on. My God, that messes with your head. Like,
did you stack
which foot? No, you sort of like stop and like, which foot goes next? I don't even know.
Amazing.
It's so weird when you get thrown out of your comfort zone.
Well, I mean, I think this has been absolutely fascinating. What's interesting is that it kind of felt like I already knew the answers internally. But it's been so helpful to have it kind of spelled out, and that I feel like the instinct was there, that I knew what was probably the right thing, but had never got round to kind of implementing it in that sort of a way. I hope people who've been listening will find it useful. I'd like to think that that people next time they're out on the peg in October, they think, I must remember what Ollie said. That would be very cool.
Yeah.
It's been a really fascinating topic to discuss because of the taboos of not talking about how well you shot and stuff, but we kind of have this duty to shoot as well as we can in that situation, and that is okay, and it is encouraged to be better. And yeah, I'm glad we've confronted that one, George, on the pod.
Well, so Chris, what are you going to do? What's your...
I've got no idea. I haven't thought about it, and it's worked up until now. Now I'm thinking about it, I'm worried. Yeah, I don't know. But I tell you, when the wheels do come off, because they do for everyone. I remember I used to shoot up in Lancashire on this particular shoot, and George Digby would always shoot up there with a group of guys who I shot with from time to time. And I remember one of them recording a scenario where he missed like a few pheasants at the start of a drive. like stuff that he shouldn't, being him, miss. And they all wound him up, and he never missed for the rest of the drive. And these are really good birds. And that's the prime example of like, that's how he sort of copes with that situation. He needed winding up. He needed de-relaxing from that scenario of whatever it was to just like get into this and do it. And I think different people react differently in different scenarios. But next time the wheels come off, a reflective thought about why that might have happened, and a relax.
That's the nice thing about, driven day shootings. You have a little bit of a gap between each drive, so you can go and sit in the car and give yourself a bit of a talking to and say, what were you doing? What was it I need to focus on about this next drive? And actually then, again, not thinking about the outcome, but thinking about what is going to make me better on the next drive. Okay, I need to move my feet, or I need to work out my shoulders. What is it? And just focus on that in the next drive. It's okay, I'm just going to move the gun a bit more.
Do you know what? Giving yourself a talking to, I almost commentate on myself when I'm shooting, particularly if I miss. I'll call myself an idiot. Okay, move your feet, you idiot. Come on. You're better than this. Come on. And I used to do the same thing when I was playing cricket and bowling. If I bowled a bad ball, I'd be chuntering to myself all the way back to my mark. Come on, George, you're better than this. Come on, pitch it up. And it never worked. But it's an interesting one, that.
It's a fine line, isn't it? The more I think about this, though, overthinking it is exactly what you're overthinking it. How many times have you heard someone use that phrase? You're overthinking it. And this happened at Long Mountain in season. I remember a particular patch, George, in one of the drives when I literally was overthinking it. And I just swung through, pointed at the bird, shot, and it came down. And I was like, well, that was it. That was easy. That's what you normally do. But I think I was thinking about what I needed to do too much. And just do what comes naturally.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. Most of all. So, Ollie, the end of the pod is desert island shooting, as I think you know, having listened to a few of these. The extinction level asteroid hits tomorrow. Your fares are in order, loved ones and enemies reconciled, dogs fed, tomatoes watered. Life is perfect. Your last day begins how?
It begins with the dogs. That's the first thing. Day shooting for me is about the excitement of the dogs. As soon as that gun cabinet is open, the two spaniels, Stevie and Rupert, eyes as wide as saucers, and they're like, right, let's go. Where are we going? And, I wouldn't go for the helicopter. I've got an old Land Rover Defender. It's my pride and joy. Did it out from scratch. Anywhere we're going, I'd go in there. I'd just jump in there. And as that goes, I don't know where I'd go. This is the big thing. I've been toying with this over the last week. Where would I go? And I don't think it would almost matter. It would just be about the people that I was with. So I'd have Tembi with me, loading for me. We're a good little team. She prefers the loading to the shooting. I'd have a few of the guys that are on the syndicate. Well, actually, pretty much everyone that's on the syndicate with me. I'd have a mixed day of pheasants and partridges, and it would just be really good fun. And it would just be non-stop laughter. The drinks would be flowing, and almost like a shoot day that I run, but potentially with more birds, and just, I don't know, the dogs actually behaving themselves for once. That's always a big win. The only thing I'd add in would be to find the pair of the number 2 Holland that I've got, so I'd have the pair and be able to shoot with those.
Oh, lovely!
That's cool.
That's very nice. Yeah, very good. Very good.
So everything going perfect, the dogs being perfectly well behaved, the shoot that you run going perfectly to plan, everyone being on their best form, just seamless.
Yeah, seamless.
I like it.
Stress-free, seamless, plenty of birds, plenty of fun, and just,
ending up in the local,
which is where they host us anyway. So
very nice.
Perfect.
Very nice. Well, Ollie, thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been really fascinating, and I've loved it.
Yeah, really interesting, Ollie. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Hopefully some useful things in there.
Well, if it doesn't work, I'll be emailing you in October.
But if you've had a revelation come to you today, or something particularly has resonated, pod@gunsonpegs.com, do let us know.
Yes, please. Right, so before we go, all that remains for me to say is that there's a final reminder that you can get your hands on a pair of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters by sending us your shooting dilemmas for us to resolve, or by sharing your unpopular opinions, or sharing drives with particularly good names. just drop us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com, and if we read it out in the next episode or any future episodes, we will send you some garters. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time with another episode, but until then, thanks very much for listening, and goodbye. Hello, and welcome to the Guns on Pegs podcast with me, George Brown. What's happened there?
and me, Chris Horn.
Should we try that again?
I was half asleep.
Jesus Christ. Okay, come on.
Right. Sorry. Yeah, great. It's been like that all day.